Lake Apopka is located 15 miles northwest of Orlando, Florida. In the 1940s, a decision was made that ultimately damaged the local economy by lessening the recreational value of the lake and damaged the environment by sickening and decimating wildlife populations. A third and often neglected component was negatively impacted as well, and that is the local community. In the 1950s, Lake Apopka was world famous for bass fishing. For more than 50 years, the North Shore was cultivated for vegetables such as corn, carrots, cucumbers, radishes, and lettuce. A portion of the lake's northern marshlands was drained to expose the rich soil on the bottom to produce more food to support the World War II effort. Water from the same lake was then used to irrigate the farming fields, flooding them in the summer and draining in the winter. This cyclical use of the lake water resulted in decades' worth of runoff and fertilizer collected in Lake Apopka. Public pressure in the 1960s focused attention on cleaning up the lake as it had turned a pea-green color from the algae blooms in the phosphorus-rich water. There was an increased population of shad, generally considered a trash fish, and the tourist industry had dried up. By the 1980s, former farmland was converted into man-made marshes to serve as a filtering system under the successful Marsh Flowway project, and stricter farming operation regulations were imposed. In 1996, the Lake Apopka Restoration Act mandated the St. Johns River Water Management District to pursue land purchases from the farmers, who were ultimately extremely well compensated for their land. It was the farm workers who suffered in relative silence as their concerns and needs were not considered in the final decision-making. In May 1998, all farming on Lake Apopka had ceased. Nearly 3,000 workers were jobless overnight. There was no job placement, retraining, or home relocation included in the plans to close the farms and purchase the land. Out of this set of circumstances, the Farmworkers Association of Florida was born. During the winter of 1998, the decades-old pattern of flooding in the summer and draining in the winter was reversed to attract more waterfowl. The largest number of migrating birds was recorded that season. What immediately followed was one of the worst bird death disasters in recorded U.S. history. By the end of the winter, more than 1,000 fish-eating birds had died, including great blue herons, bald eagles, and white pelicans. Extensive environmental testing has been done on the native animal species and the water and soil quality of the lake. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, with $1.5 million in government funding and under the Migratory Bird Act, investigated the lake over several years. In a 2001 report, it was determined that multiple organochlorine compounds were responsible for the mass bird deaths. University of Florida researcher Dr. Louis Gillette found that alligators in the lake had lowered reproductive rates, genetic abnormalities, elevated estrogen levels, and stunted sexual organs. His work further confirmed the evidence of hormone-disrupting or endocrine-disrupting chemicals and their effect on the environment and health of wildlife. Certain chemicals mimic hormones in the body and fool the body into activating certain hormonal reactions. They also impact the offspring of individuals that have been exposed. Adding insult to injury, in 1980, the Environmental Protection Agency investigated the nearby Tower Chemical Company Superfund site on the south side of the lake. It was determined that there was significant contamination of both the surface and groundwater with DDT. In 1999, it was determined that there was a plume of contaminated groundwater below at the Drum Chemical Company site, a second Superfund site on the north shore of the lake. Lost in the various evaluations of economy and environment was the daily exposure the farm workers experienced. While individually the chemicals may not pose health risks, the combination increases the burden on the body, which can lead to suppression of the immune system. Workers came in contact with the same chemicals implicated in the bird deaths through multiple mechanisms, like pesticides sprayed from planes and touching wet plants. Many suffered from frequent sinus problems, arthritis, diabetes, high blood pressure, and skin problems. Families suffered reproductive problems. Pregnant mothers had difficult pregnancies, and many farm workers' children were born with birth defects and exhibited diminished cognitive abilities and motor skills. To date, the fish continue to be a food source for farm workers and others in the community. It's safe to assume that if the fish, birds, and alligators were affected by the chemicals, that the farm workers were, which means that their children have been exposed as well. No research has been done to evaluate those affected. During the summer of 2010, the Lake Apopka Farmworker Memorial Quilt Project was completed. Loved ones crafted hand-sewn squares that were placed in one of two quilts. These quilts were showcased at the 2010 Environmental Justice Symposium at Florida A&M University College of Law and FAMU Center for Environmental Equity and Justice. Farm workers were able to share their experiences and illustrate the need for social equity and environmental justice. In 2012, while working on their environmental and social justice projects for their degree program, 5 students from the FAMU College of Law visited the Farmworkers Association. These students were able to view the memorial quilts and take the toxic tour, which further emphasized the need for environmental advocacy. The idea of sustainability stands on 3 legs: the economy, the environment, and social equity for the community. The Lake Apopka farm worker community is an example of an environmental justice community left behind in the policy and planning. It is not sustainable to address only the economy or only the environment. The Marsh Flowway Project and Lake Apopka Restoration Act were implemented to address the ecological issues such as the health of the lake, but ignored the health and concerns of the people. Collaborations between community organizations like the Farmworkers Association of Florida and educational institutions like Florida A&M University College of Law are invaluable and can boost the strength and effectiveness of equity with regards to sustainability. HBCUs are privy to the socio-economic and environmental plights of their student populations and the communities from which they come. They understand the importance of engaging the local communities in an effort to create innovative and interdisciplinary partnerships to identify needs, solve problems, and lead by example. Sustainable practices have been an integral part of the African American community for centuries. Leadership exhibited by people like Professor Randy Abate and students like Cameryn Justice Rivera of FAMU College of Law and community activists like Jeanie Economos of the Farmworkers Association of Florida can collectively create comprehensive and sustainable solutions.